Think you've seen an amazing John Wall 360 layup? Think again. American Express is bringing basketball fans the epic journeys behind the All-Star moves. Go to youtube.com/American Express now and see the All-Star journeys behind the All-Star moves.
ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
You know, one of the things that is kind of drives me crazy, and has forever, and it's stuff in politics that drives me crazy, is everybody's seeking affirmation. Nobody's really seeking information. If you're a liberal, you watch MSNBC. If you're a conservative, you watch Fox. And nobody really grows. You just hear what you want to hear. You know, a liberal's going to go to their allies, a conservative goes to their allies, and the loser is the process, and the loser really is the final result because nobody gets smarter. And I'm finding this with the New England Patriots Deflategate. The Boston media, surrounds Belichick and Brady. They can do no wrong. Those who hate the Patriots, it's Belichick. And I was reading this morning, you can literally find information for whatever side you want. According to Warren Sharp of Sharp Football Analysis, the Patriots do fumble far less than any other team that plays outdoors, where the elements can make the football harder to handle. They are 52% better than the league average, meaning, what's the benefit of deflated balls? Running backs don't fumble as much. I can take that and go, yeah, those guys are cheating. But I can also take this from Head Smart Labs. They develop testing devices to aid in reducing sports concussions. They did their own experiment. They tested a temperature difference of 75 degrees and the game time on the field of 51 degrees. They also wet the 12 brand-new footballs to simulate real game time conditions. And the moisture, these scientists argue, would increase the volume of the ball and decrease the pressure. That's a pro-Patriot stance. So in the end, you can find somebody to validate your argument, whether you're pro or anti-Bill Belichick. Belichick held a press conference this weekend. I've always had sort of a belief that don't call press conferences if you don't need to, A. If you do call a press conference, B, stay in your field of expertise. And C, don't tell your team to ignore noise and then go create some. I did not think it was a great moment for Bill Belichick. I thought it was needless. It was impromptu. I don't believe in impromptu press conferences. It's what got John Idzik of the Jets fired. And if you're going to call a press conference, talk about stuff you absolutely, positively know. If you're an economics major, talk about finance. If you're not into science, and most football coaches don't delve into science. At one point, Belichick, give me the My Cousin Vinny reference. It dovetailed into a My Cousin Vinny reference, which was just not a great moment for Bill Belichick.
I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert in footballs. I'm not an expert in football measurements. Would not say that I'm Mona Lisa Vito of the football world, as she was in the car expertise. Good hell, that's awful. There's just no way to get around it. Bill Belichick shouldn't have called a press conference. He's been telling people. Tom Brady said this yesterday. Play me the Brady bite. Brady says, hey, whenever a controversy hits, this is what Bill Belichick always tells us whenever a major controversy hits. Do we have that?
Has the NFL contacted you personally yet about the deflategate?
No, that's not it.
I think we're a pretty mentally tough team, and I think we've dealt with other things in the past. So I think coaches always said ignore the noise.
Okay, so Bill Belichick always says, ignore the noise. Don't. Well, Bill Belichick didn't follow his own rules. He went Bobby Knight. Be disciplined, though I can't control myself. I thought it was a mess. I didn't think it was good. But you can pick either side. If you buy into the Patriots, you can find studies that back them. If you think they're cheaters, you can find studies that back them. Opening rant brought to you by Regis. New way to work. Call 1-800-OFFICES, 1-800-OFFICES. There's a lot of stuff going on. Mike Krzyzewski, Duke head coach, won his 1,000th game. A guy that knows him very well. Jeff Goodman's going to join me in about 10 minutes as we're live from Fashion Square in Scottsdale. There was also, I thought, over the course of the weekend. Richard Sherman, now of the Seahawks, is talking a lot. A lot of people struggle with Richard Sherman of the Seahawks. But he's a little bit like a whistleblower, that the immediate reaction from Richard Sherman's comments, if you like football, is, whoa, slow down. You're bad-mouthing the game I love. But I got to tell you something. When Richard Sherman comes out and talks, he's almost always on point. He banged on the NFL, the Seahawks cornerback. He banged on him for not allowing players to do beer ads, yet beer sponsors are the number one sponsors of the league. He calls the league out for seeking safety, but wanting to add 2 more football games and making players play on a short week Thursday night. And here's another bite from Richard Sherman, kind of calling into question Roger Goodell's relationship with the New England Patriots. And this makes a lot of people uncomfortable. I get it. But once again, here is the NFL's megaphone, Richard Sherman.
Will they be punished? Probably not. Not as long as Robert Kraft and Roger Goodell are still taking pictures at their respective homes. I think it was just at Kraft's house last week for the AFC Championship. You talk about conflict of interest.
Got to be honest. Roger Goodell's a commissioner. He's got to know better than hanging out at people's houses, whether you're working for them or not, as we get ready for a Super Bowl. There is an appearance of conflict of interest. It's not a great moment for Roger Goodell, and it does look sketchy. So again, Richard Sherman bothers a lot of people, but what he says carries a lot of weight and a lot of truth among the players. He has really become the spokesperson. He's got the Compton street smarts and the Stanford book smarts, and I got to tell you, players overwhelmingly back him. And just like employees at a major company, the players are a huge part of this league. So I didn't think it was a great weekend for Bill Belichick. I thought it was once again a very accurate and outspoken take from Richard Sherman, who a lot of people outside of Seattle don't like. I'm going to talk to Jeff Goodman. Apparently he has a great story on Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke head coach who won 1,000 games. I like Krzyzewski. He does rub some people the wrong way. He's incredibly intense. But you tell me a basketball coach in our lives that connects with college players and NBA players like him. NBA coaches don't relate to the college game. Most college coaches are kind of looked at by NBA guys as not qualified. I think Krzyzewski owns very unique real estate in American basketball.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
By the way, for the 238th straight year, I did not watch the Pro Bowl yesterday on television. I think it's an abomination. I will not watch the Pro Bowl. The streak continues. I have never watched the Pro Bowl. I saw one carry one time by Walter Abercrombie, who went to Baylor, I think played for the Steelers or something. I turned it on. I saw him make a run and was disgusted by the entire game and turned it off. I've never watched the Pro Bowl, but I did get some very encouraging news yesterday. Andy Dalton got booed off the field, which was great to hear, because I've been saying this for years. It is amazing. I got nothing against fantasy football. I tend to be a guy, if I had a choice, I would just bet a game. Here's a hundy. I'm going to bet a game, and you win a hundy or you lose a hundy. Fantasy football, you got to play with it. You got, hey, let's have a meeting, sergeant of arms, who's the treasurer. I'm just not into the process. It seems like a lot of work for me. And people who play fantasy football always say, it takes like 3 minutes a day. You're a bunch of liars. That's like signing up for a porn site and saying, one minute a week. You're a bunch of liars. If you're in a fantasy football league, you play all week. That's what you do. You're bored with your accounting job. You're bored with your job. You're on your roster constantly. Stop lying. I just don't have time for it. I would rather call my bookie, here's a hundy, win, lose, I'm out, and hang out with other people. Fantasy guy, and I got nothing against him, but we're just different people. My line was always, gamblers pick up the check. Fantasy football guys argue over the tip. They're just not my kind of people. But I'll say this, the thing I really resent about fantasy football guy, because I don't really care much, I don't have a lot of friends who play it, but I know everybody in America mostly does, is that they are so stat-induced. Like, they'll judge players now based on stats, whereas a gambler doesn't. A gambler's like, that team's better than that team. What's the number? Boom, give me value. Fantasy football guy is like, well, this guy doesn't pay me off, so I'm not. Andy Dalton stinks. Andy Dalton, if he wasn't on a great roster, Andy Dalton's a backup. But Andy Dalton comes into the league, and because he got drafted later, he didn't go to a bad team. He went to Cincinnati, who had all sorts of talent. Cincinnati's got a good O-line, terrific running game, very good tight ends, outstanding wide receivers. Marvin Lewis is a very good defensive coordinator, so their defense is always above average. And he comes into this league. Yesterday at the Pro Bowl, he was 9 for 20. Who goes 9 for 20 at a Pro Bowl? It's like missing layups at the NBA All-Star game. I mean, nobody plays any defense in that game. I don't even know if they have tackling. Or did they abolish that like 6 years ago at the Pro Bowl? But if you look at Andy Dalton and his stats are a monster. 62%, 62%, 65%, 3,700 yards, 4,300 yards, 35. It's like a monster, like Joe Montana plus. But you got to watch the games. You got to watch the games. If you look at Russell Wilson's stats, Russell Wilson only averages about 3,100 yards, 3,200 yards a year passing. That's it. But Russell Wilson wins games. Is unbelievable against great defenses in the red zone. If the play breaks down, Russell Wilson makes the play. Go back to that Packer game. There weren't open people. He made people open. Andy Dalton's got guys open and often can't hit them. So fantasy guy has been, I'll get this pushback on Andy Dalton. Come on, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks, 65% completion rate, 3,700 yards. Watch the games. Come on, watch the games. Greg Cosell's been on this show, and he's talked about how certain quarterbacks see the play before it's there. Does Andy Dalton? By the way, the reason Andy Dalton was playing is because all the other quarterbacks backed out. Aaron Rodgers said, no thanks, calf injury. Drew Brees was recovering from an injury. They turned to their sixth alternate, Joe Flacco. He declined because his wife is expecting their third child, probably in August, and he backed out. So Andy Dalton got to play in this football game. I am gloriously happy he was booed. That sounds like I'm a horrible human being, but it's like, finally, the truth. I was offered him last year on this show for Super Bowl. I said, I refuse. I won't put Andy Dalton on the air.
Andy Dalton's a boring water pistol.
God, I know I sound like a jerk, but I had a really good think. I'm just not very nice when he's probably a wonderful guy, too. He's probably has religious conviction. He's happily married. He's probably a wonderful, he's a redheaded kid, so he probably got picked on.
He's a hack.
Tony, you're in the herd on ESPN Radio. Tony, go ahead.
Hey, Colin, love the show, man. I agree with you. Andy Dalton is a hack. But he's like the seventh alternate.
I know.
It's more of an indictment on the game than, fantasy football voters. I'm a fantasy guy. I wouldn't have put him in the Pro Bowl, not in a million years. But what's the alternative when you get down that low?
Well, you know what's funny is the Pro Bowl has so many cancellations. The only thing that has more cancellations than the Pro Bowl is like a restaurant with a botulism scare. Like, that's what the Pro Bowl's become. It's like, oh, brother, I'm going to cancel my reservation. Foot injury, getting married again, 13th child, Ebola. Like, everybody's got an excuse. Nobody who's good wants to play in the Pro Bowl. It's just terrible. It is. It's a restaurant with a botulism scare. Like 800 calls. I can't make it tonight. I'm helping my friend go to the airport.
Want more of the herd? The Thundering Herd Podcast.
I flew from where I live in Connecticut through Atlanta to Scottsdale, Phoenix, last night, and I had the great pleasure to sit next to Brian Price, the manager of the Cincinnati Reds, for 3.5 hours. And I went Rain Man. We were going 70s, 80s baseball trivia. We talked about, Cuban players in the sport. I had a million questions about defensive shifts and why I think baseball should get rid of them. And it was really fun. People think I don't like baseball. I love reading about it. I love writing about it. I love talking about it. I struggle watching baseball games on TV in the regular season. I've said that for years. But it was fascinating. Every question I had about baseball, and we just chewed on this I kept saying, you want to go to bed? You want to read something? He's like, no, this is fascinating. And we started talking about baseball. And then earlier in the day, I'd been reading Twitter at the airport, and Jeff Passan, Yahoo Sports, going to join me in 30 seconds. He had talked to 2 baseball general managers anonymously, and it was really fascinating, but it was really encouraging because the baseball general managers were telling Jeff Passan, a guy they obviously trust, that, listen, you gotta seek casual fans, not just diehards, and stop worrying about the intellectual argument in baseball. Is that if it's better for casual fans in the sport, then let's grow the game and attract people. Because I've been arguing this when it comes to defensive shifts. I don't like them. And football gets rid of stuff all the time. Basketball gets rid of stuff all the time. Hockey gets rid of stuff all the time. Soccer does. Why can't baseball get rid of defensive shifts? If it's hurting scoring, if it's slowing the game, why can't you get rid of that? Jeff Passan, Yahoo Sports. Let's, Jeff, first of all, thanks for coming on. You talked to 2 general managers in baseball, and a lot of these baseball guys are sabermetricians. What was their take? Tell my audience their take on the slowing of the game and how the audience and how the consumers are reacting of it, because they didn't sound like echo chamber guys at all.
No, actually, and if you knew who these guys were, Colin, both of them would be considered very sabermetric-friendly general managers. So it's not like I'm going and picking out the GMs necessarily who would be averse to the shift because they're old school or because they don't have those analytics. These are guys who could potentially benefit from that knowledge and from that innovation. And I don't think they were railing against the shift itself per se. I think it was the idea that baseball is just this place that refuses to change or at least consider changes, and that Rob Manfred, one of the things that he's doing as he comes into, his second day as commissioner right now, is there are no sacred cows. And I think that they appreciated the fact that he is at least willing to look at and listen to different things rather than getting stuck with this romantic idea that baseball is presently constituted as infallible, because it's obviously not. They've had trouble keeping fans. The games have gone too long. Offense has gone down. And to sit here, while Rome is burning and pretend like there's no active solution, I think is a really hubristic thing to do. And I applaud Rob Manfred for at least considering different options. Now, is getting rid of the shift the right one? I don't know at this point, but there are a lot of things to consider, to discuss, and he's willing to do so, which I appreciate.
Well, Twitter, conflict rules the land, and context and nuance get trampled on Twitter. But I was following you yesterday, and what was the reaction, Jeff? Because you're known as a columnist, but a strong baseball guy. What was the reaction from baseball people who follow you on some of your comments, which were, can we get out of this intellectual thing where baseball's too smart to change? Were you getting some pushback?
Oh, I was getting a ton of pushback, and I think it's because the diehard fans are the ones who were on Twitter. And I don't know, I think you used the word echo chamber. That's all Twitter really is. It's people sitting there and bouncing stuff off and sounding smart and sounding passionate. And look, diehard fans are really important. I get that. But baseball has the diehards. Baseball's not losing the diehards if it gets rid of shifts. They may be a little mad, but they'll get used to it. There was a day before defensive shifts took place. Baseball was okay back then too. and the idea here's the thing that makes me angriest about this. It's the idea that by potentially getting rid of defensive shifts, baseball is trying to crush innovation. That's a joke. Defensive shifts are not innovative anymore. All 30 teams now understand how they work, why they work, and how to optimize them. And it's not a novel thing at this point. If there is a baseball team out there that looks at the repeal or the potential repeal of defensive shifts as an indictment on the ability to innovate, that team is going to lose, because the entire reason to run a baseball club is to try and find that little innovation. And just because they take away one doesn't mean that teams are going to stop trying to find others.
You know, it's funny. Jeff Passan, Yahoo Sports, great columnist and an incredibly knowledgeable baseball person as well as other things, but I always think of you a lot in a baseball context. When I fell in love with baseball, this is what's funny about baseball. And I don't know, it's a little bit like chess. I mean, football's more checkers, baseball's more chess. There's a certain thing about baseball fans as you get older, maybe you get snobbier. But when I fell in love with baseball, Jeff, I fell in love with baseball because I loved Joe Morgan and Lou Brock and Ricky Henderson and Pete Rose, hustlers, divers, guys that ran over the catcher. But there's something, and I would think to myself, that's how you get young people. Make it more athletic. But there is something about the sensibility of baseball, Jeff, and you're around it a lot, where the older fans get, there's this sort of like intellectual appeal where like it's only for smart people. And I don't know if other fans do that, but there is sort of an intellectual battle within the sport that other sports I don't think face. Where does that come from?
No, I just think it's inherent baseball snobbery. I think it's something that's left over from the days when baseball was America's sport. And I think baseball fans look at baseball as the absolute apex of sporting everything. You've got the athletic ability. You've got the intellect. You've got the strategy. You've got all the things that a great game should have. And that's why baseball has been so loath to change on field from the past. Because, look, the game has done very well, and there's been very little change, and it's still successful. And I understand the romantic side of that, of not wanting a pitch clock to be out there, but there comes a point at which some of the natural evolution of the game has gone in the wrong direction. They need to change the strike zone. And that's happening. The strike zone's changed a number of times. I think probably 4 or 5 times there have been explicit instructions given to umpires throughout the years for the strike zone to change, but it has crept way too low. It's gone up a little high, and while they've shrunk it on the sides by an inch on the outside corner to lefties and about 3/4 of an inch on the outside corner to righties over the last year and a half or so, while they've done that, the up and down is the big issue. And I think once the strike zone gets back above the knees as opposed to the bottom of the hollow of the knees, you're going to start seeing an uptick in offense. You know, ultimately, there's not a whole lot of runs to be saved by banning defensive shifts, and that's the pragmatic approach here. You know, it looks a little weird. It's interesting. It shuts down, no question, dead pull hitters like, Brian McCann, Mark Teixeira, David Ortiz has been affected by it, certainly. You can talk to especially the left-handed pull hitters. You can talk to them, and they've been shut down. But ultimately, the number of balls in play being turned into outs are the exact same almost as there were before defensive shifts. The strike zone is really the big issue here, and the number of strikeouts, uptick in that, and the number of walks, the lowering of that, has been a huge, huge problem for offense.
Jeff Passan, Yahoo Sports. On late notice, we called him because we were flying cross country. We're so glad you could come on the show and enlighten us, bud. Thank you so much.
Pleasure's all mine, Colin. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Colin Cowherd.
The Thundering Herd Podcast.
Geico presents Strange Saving Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
ESPN Radio. This is the Thundering Herd Podcast.
Former NFL exec, multiple winner NFL exec of the year, and a friend of mine, Bill Polian, who built that dynasty in Indianapolis, have been around the league forever and ever. That's a picture of Scottsdale. There's old Scottsdale. This is really an interesting community which has grown like a Vegas through the years, but I can remember years and years, 30, 40 years ago, the Phoenix Suns, and then you got a baseball team, then you got an NFL team, and I went to an Arizona Cowboys game about 25 years ago, and it was 85% Cowboy fans. So there's a lot of retirees here from Seattle and Dallas and all over the country and Denver. Do you ever come to Arizona outside of football? Do you ever come here, golf, hang out?
Oh, yeah, I love it here. I think it's great. It really is my number one place in the country to come in the wintertime.
It is.
And everybody, the league meetings this year are going to be at the Arizona Biltmore there, usually held about every 4 years there. This is almost everybody's favorite place to come.
Okay, so I was telling you during the break is I'm a believer, Bill, in high-profile businesses. I don't care if it's the White House or the Patriots' house. I'm not a big fan of calling press conferences. I don't like them. Talk as little as you can. I didn't love Bill Belichick calling the press conference. Was he encouraged to?
Probably. You know, what he did was put their case out there before the investigator gets to the details. And that's typically what's done in this day and age in any high-profile situation, you know, whether it's a situation politically with the White House or in high-profile trials.
Get your message out.
Get your message out first. So that's what he was doing. But many years ago, there was a baseball umpire. This is pre-World War II, named Bill Clem, and he was very autocratic. He ruled with an iron fist.
Right.
And supposedly one time he hesitated a little bit on a pitch, a very important pitch to Babe Ruth, and Babe Ruth turned around and said to him, "What is it?" And Bill Clem said, "It ain't nothing till I call it." So this ain't nothing until Mr. Wells makes his report. That's the bottom line.
Listen, and I've said this. The funny narrative here is that Bill Belichick pushes the envelope, and I've been telling my audience all week. Pete Carroll had violations at USC, Adderall issues, practice issues. Pete's an envelope pusher, too. He's a very aggressive coach. But Belichick's got there's a certain thing hovering over Bill that cheat.
Well, that's part of it. Spygate, you can't divorce it.
Right.
There's a previous offense there. But here's why it's a big deal. As I say, Mr. Wells will determine, and Jeff Pash will determine what the facts are. And, you know, I have the ultimate faith in their veracity and integrity. I've known Jeff Pash 25 years. I'd literally put my life in his hands. I mean, that's how good a lawyer is, and that's how good a person he is. So I wouldn't worry about that one iota. The facts will come out. The bottom line, however, is this. It is a big deal because the NFL is based on the principle of the level playing field.
Sure.
On any given Sunday. Well, on any given Sunday exists because it is a level playing field. And the competition committee on which I served for 19 years it is charged first and foremost with making sure that the field is level. And then the league office has to enforce whatever rules exist there. When you violate on-field rules, when one team has an advantage over another that is created either artificially or by that team deliberately, however it's created, you no longer have a level playing field. So, for example, if you and I were playing a game in inclement weather, we're both allowed to wear gloves, right?
Yeah.
You wear regulation-approved gloves. The league approves the gloves.
Yeah.
I come out and I have stickum all over my gloves, and I got tackified substances like suction cups on the end, and nobody catches me. A, I violated the rule, and B, I've given myself a huge competitive advantage. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, tack is a big deal. Quarterbacks tell you it's not the deflation, it's the tack on the ball, too.
That's exactly right. So this is a big deal because it goes to the integrity of the game, and it goes to unbalancing the level playing field.
He was arguably an arch nemesis, probably isn't the right term, but he was your rival. The Patriots were the only thing in the way most years, maybe the Steelers, of a Super Bowl. When you faced New England, were you concerned about stuff like this?
Yes. I think you have to always say, once Spygate was proven to have taken place, then you say, listen, we need to be prepared. Fool me once, it's my fault. Fool me twice, it's your fault. I'm sorry, the other way around. Yeah. Fool me once, it's your fault.
But they pushed an envelope sometimes you weren't comfortable with.
Well, I wouldn't say not comfortable. Just be aware and make sure that you do everything to protect yourself. That's your responsibility. Don't blame it on that. Don't look for the league to protect you.
Yeah.
Don't look for somebody else to protect you. Don't expect that whoever your opponent is going to take any pity on you or say, oh, we can't do this because of that. Forget about it. You take care of yourself. That was the approach that we took.
Bill Polian joining us. a lot of people have said, why does the league let the teams control the footballs? And Manning and Brady years ago, kind of changed the way they did footballs. They said on the road we should have a say. You were in the process. Peyton Manning was part of it, wasn't he?
No, that's been totally misrepresented. Let me see if I can quickly explain it.
Sure, no problem.
Wilson Company wanted to change the composition of the laces of the ball.
Yeah.
They came to the competition committee and said, can we do it? Competition committee said we won't even begin to address it unless we talk to the quarterbacks. So the competition committee said to Mike Pereira and others in the league office, form a committee of the quarterbacks and have them test the balls. And it was all of the people represented on the competition committee, which was Dallas, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, et cetera, 8 teams, Tennessee. And then we said the competition committee said add Tom Brady. Add New England. He's got to have a voice in it. So they tested these new balls, if you will, during OTAs and minicamp. And the report came back, no, we don't like the new balls. Yeah. We want to play with the old one. All right, so Wilson said, okay, fine, that's what we'll do. In the process of reporting back, they said, why can't we prepare the balls during the week ourselves? Because when the ball comes out of the box, it has a slippery sheen on it.
Yes, I've heard that from several quarterbacks.
Wilson sends you a special tool that you use to prepare the ball.
Okay.
And so the quarterback said, why can't we prepare the balls during the week, present them to the referees for inspection? If they pass inspection, we'll use them in the game.
And that's what happens now, right?
That's what happens now. So the issue of preparation is one thing. Inflation is quite another. They're two separate issues. And people have
melded the two together.
Melded, yeah. I was going to say conflated, which would confuse the situation even more. Yeah. They've melded the two together, and that's wrong.
Yeah, there was a 5 or 6 minute period. People are saying that New England, I don't think a ball boy has the courage to do something without Tom Brady. And I said, it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't pass the smell test. Does it to you?
Well, I don't know. Based on what Coach Belichick said the other day, I think the import of what he was saying was it could be atmospheric.
Yes.
That raises other questions.
Yes.
So, and you do have to answer the question of chain of custody. What happened in the officials' room? What happened when the balls were taken to the field? Who handled them, etc. Mr. Wells and his group will answer that.
Mm-hmm.
Now we know what the procedure is.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, while it's not different than the championship game, here's the good part. The league runs the championship games and the Super Bowls. They had a representative with the officials all the time. They had an independent league guy watching all of this taking place. So there's ample witnesses. There's ample evidence of a chain of custody. This will get sorted out, I'm confident, very well. Now, will it get sorted out before the Super Bowl? I doubt that.
Yeah. Bill Polian. It is, it's one of those, people have said to me, Colin, you're playing this story up. And I say, folks, some things like Tim Tebow take off and there's nothing I can do. I'm a victim of the story.
Listen, when this appears on the nightly news, on all three networks and every cable network, you have to cover it.
I give up.
We don't have it. We don't have a choice.
Just a conduit to information, Bill. By the way, here's the other thing. I saw a story. They listed every player 1 through 110. Who are the best players in this game? Nobody's addressing this. There's a lot of great players. They had Cam Chancellor at 11. Cam Chancellor's incredible. Bill, this Super Bowl, there's 20 guys in this. There's 20 players in this Super Bowl that I would consider difference makers.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite go that high, but it is a very interesting game, and it's a very interesting X's and O's game because you have two really, really big questions that have to be answered on both sides. And then there's numerous other sub-issues which are really great, too, if you're an X's and O's person. But the big overriding questions are, who covers Gronk?
Yep.
You cannot beat the Patriots unless you take Gronk away.
No question. What's the second one?
Second one is, how do the Patriots defend the option? Because you're going to see option. And by the way, the Packers did not defend it well last week.
By the way, there's a young player for the Patriots, Collins, who may get kind of a hybrid linebacker. Is it Jamie Collins?
Yes.
I think he'll be a big factor in this game. We got to go, Bill Polian. Absolute pleasure again.
Putting style in black T-shirts. It's Colin Cowherd, the Thundering Herd podcast.
This year's Super Bowl will be on NBC, and Al Michaels will be the voice of it, his 9th Super Bowl. And it was interesting. Vin Scully's a legendary baseball announcer. And Vin is a guy who is sort of an artist as a broadcaster, but doesn't like to talk about controversial subjects. And I think on a local level, you can get away with that. You don't have to talk about the PED or the HGH. But if you're doing national broadcasting, the critics are watching, and you're going to be held to a higher standard. That's not a knock on Vin. It's a reality of his broadcasting sort of style. And Al Michaels is joining us. So here's Deflategate, and you go into your 9th Super Bowl. Do you feel some sort of pressure, Al, as the voice of this national game, the most watched broadcast in America this year, to talk a lot about it, a little about it? How do you feel going into it?
Well, Colin, right now, I mean, the story is a story that has been out there for a week. By the time we get it Sunday at 4:30 Mountain Time, I don't know where it will be. So there's a lot that we're going to learn over the next 4 or 5 days. It'll still be discussed probably around the clock until almost game time. When we go on the air, will there be new information? That's number one. Or are we just going to rehash what we have learned or not learned during the week? Let me put it to you this way. If when I come on the air on Sunday, and instead of Chris Collinsworth, I have a professor of astrophysics from MIT sitting next to me, then you'll know we have completely gone off the deep end. So the whole thing, I think, Colin, is going to be, where is this thing on Sunday afternoon? What do we know? What have we learned recently? When I say recently, either Friday, Saturday, or at some point on Sunday. And if it hasn't been much, I think at that point, the great thing is the game starts. And we're there to do the game. We're not going to ignore this thing, but we're not going to belabor it either. People are going to tune in to watch the game, and once they kick off, away we go. Will we fold in some anecdotes or maybe some references to it? Yes, but it won't be overdone, I guarantee you that.
And I briefly in my career, I started out doing play-by-play, and I never liked anything getting in the way of the play-by-play. I love the idea of building with a blank canvas, a game story. To you, when this thing breaks, are you thinking to yourself 2 weeks ago, good Lord, because do you want to just do a game, or how do you feel about stories like this?
Well, I don't mind talking about it, but here's the thing. As you know, in play-by-play, you can't roll in a 3-minute story in between second down and 6 and third and 4. I mean, we, for the most part, we might have 30 seconds between plays. With most teams running a hurry-up, it's less than that. We want to get to a replay, probably half to two-thirds of the time. So these are stories that are very good for talk radio, for the shows that are on television, for halftime shows, pregame shows, and God knows NBC is going to do, 6, 7, 8 hours of pregame material, both on NBC and NBCSN. That's where you can get into it and discuss it. Now, I don't know what appetite people will have for this by the weekend. I think they'll be ready for the game, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do the game. And it's not that I want to, avoid it. And, I can go on your show, and we can talk about this, but I don't have the opportunity or the time to delve into it to the degree I could with you on the show. People want to watch the game.
Yeah, Al, it's funny. I was very lucky. I did some AAA baseball and a couple college things, and then I've done, local stuff. I was very lucky. I never had bosses. Maybe they trusted me. Maybe they were just oblivious that told me what to say. Nobody's going to tell you. You've obviously built a career that nobody's going to tell you how to say things. Have you ever in your entire career, though, felt pressure from above management ownership to talk about things that maybe you weren't comfortable with?
Well, never to the degree that I couldn't talk and have dialogue with those people. There's been really nothing that I felt totally uncomfortable with, because had there been, we would have discussed it for a long period of time. It's one of those things where I just don't say things out of the blue. When we are going to delve into a controversial issue, it's a collaborative situation. We have a great producer in Fred Godelli, director Drew Esikoff. These guys have been through a few rodeos themselves. I've got Chris Collinsworth. I've got Michelle Tafoya. We've got some great people around us, the research people. So we will discuss this. And the key thing for us is, can we present new information? If we can't, and we're going to go back over things, then what? I mean, which door are we going to come in, and which door do we come out of when we're dealing with a particular issue? So we have opinions. You know, as I say, with you, I can express what my opinion is to a far greater degree and in greater detail than I'll be able to do on the show, because, as I say, it's 2nd and 6, and the next thing you know, it's 3rd and 4, and then you go into a commercial, and that's really all you have time for, to do the game.
You know, it's funny. Pete Carroll at USC, you live in Southern Cal.
Right.
Pete was pushing the envelope at USC. He left and there was an avalanche of sanctions. He's had the Adderall stuff. He's had the practice issues. But Pete, maybe it's the hippy-dippy West Coast guy. We see him as ethereal and everyman. Belichick is painted as dark, covert, mysterious. Could I argue they're kind of the same guy?
Yes, you could, and it's not just indigenous to football. I mean, I was talking to somebody last night about, let's go back to baseball. Stuffed balls, Gaylord Perry, corked bats, PEDs, whatever. Everybody's looking for an edge. In hockey, different teams, depending on whether they're a fast team or a slow team, they can resurface the ice. They can turn the temperature down, make the ice harder. You can skate faster. If you're going to get out-skated by somebody else, maybe you turn the temperature up and the ice is softer. That's been going on for years. You can fool around with the boards in hockey, so either the caroms come out to center ice, or they die along the boards. So this has been, and who knows if we've had deflated basketballs through the years. Everybody's always looking for an edge. So you bump right up against the rule book. And sometimes you go to the other side of the rule book. And did that happen here? I don't know. I mean, I'm like you, like everybody else. I'm still curious to learn as to whether, this is a bunch of nothing or whether something nefarious took place. We'll find out eventually.
Al, I was saying beyond Al Michaels joining us, voice of NBC Sports, he'll be the voice of the Super Bowl, his 9th. Bill Russell threw up for every basketball game he played. I would ask you about your pregame rituals. I doubt you do that, but do you get nervous for anything at this point? Do you get a little nerves?
You know, you get excited and anxious, and you want to get going. Fortunately, having been there before, I know what to expect, so this is not going to be anything that's new. But still, it's very exciting. I mean, for me, it's I do this for a living. I've loved to do it. I'm living out the childhood dream of wanting to do this. So I'm to the point in life now, I'm relishing it more than ever. It's not going to last forever. I've done a bunch of these now. I'm still as excited about doing these things as I ever was, but I'm relishing it. And I think I'm a lot like, I've been talking to a lot of, older players who, still playing at a pretty high level, but I'm hearing more and more now from the guys who are playing pro sports, Colin, in their, mid to late 30s, just how much more they appreciate it, and they want to relish it and just enjoy the moment. And I'm pretty much of that vein right now. I want to come on the air, get out cleanly, and then once the game starts, I think I'm pretty much, and Chris is like a player. He's played in these games. The guys have the first contact on the first play, and then you are where you have been. So for me, I want to get the game started, and once it does, I'm not saying it's like another Sunday night game. I do realize the audience is 6 times as much, but I'm not going to do anything differently in terms of how I announce this game than I would on a normal Sunday night. I mean, why would you do that? Why would you do a Sunday night game, and Monday night for 29 years, and then use a different template when you get to the Super Bowl? That wouldn't work.
By the way, personal question. Last time we talked to you, you'd still never eaten a vegetable in your life. Have you wavered?
I have not, Colin. That ship has sailed so far out into the ocean they can never find it right now. Trust me. No, there's not a chance. At this point in my life, zero. Unless somebody sneaks something into, some spaghetti sauce or something, that ship is long gone.
Okay, so I won't recommend arugula. It's one of my favorites. Al Michaels. NBC Sports, 9th Super Bowl. It'll be the Deflategate. We're not sure what it'll be. It's 2 incredibly deep and talented teams. Al, love having you on the show. Thanks again.
Okay, Colin. I'll see you down there this week. Take care.
Technology gone bad. Gone bad. This is the Thundering Herd podcast.
Okay, it's time. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this to be condescending or obnoxious, but Uncle Ronaldo has a theory. Don't check your bags in an airport. So I've tried to enlighten my young staff that all you do by checking bags is lose control and give people who don't really care individually about your bags control of your bags. So I got in a plane last night. Vince, my producer, got in a different plane. Vince, who used to be, I'm going to check bags, no longer checks bags. He has grown and evolved. Last night, he got on a plane, went to the tarmac, sat there for an hour, pulled it back in, changed planes. Vince would have lost his bags if he was a bag checker. Instead, Vince may have arrived 4 hours late, but he had his bags. Another person in our staff, I won't mention her name, Amanda, she checked a bag. And then the airline, no reason to mention that, could be a massive sponsor. By the time she got here to Arizona, they didn't have her bag. She went to her hotel. They called her 6 hours later. Come back to the airport. We found your bag. The moral to the story is don't check a bag. You're giving people who don't really care about your baggage control of your personal belongings. Roll that T-shirt up, roll that underwear, those socks up, jam them in your shoes. I'm here for 5 days. I packed one bag. I could fit a bowling ball in there right now. I've got nothing but space. All right, another topic I haven't had time to get to. The Cavs were 1-7 when LeBron was out. They're 6-1 since he's returned. He's had over 30 points 4 times, over 25 every game. LeBron James equals wins, period. Even on the same roster, comes back, team's now good as anybody in the East. Yesterday, Cavs clobbered the Thunder. LeBron beat Durant again. And I said, it's interesting. Some of the young people on my staff disagree, but I said I'd take Steph Curry today over Kevin Durant. They're the same age, but one isn't as passive-aggressive. One isn't a 6'11" two-guard. One plays his natural position, and one controls the tempo because he's a ball handler. Now, I think if you asked a lot of people, they'd go Kevin Durant. But I said, it's funny. Kevin Durant, 8th year in the league. One decent run at the title. Not generally hurt, but hurt recently. A 6'11" two-guard who's passive-aggressive. We destroy LeBron for the same things we give Durant a complete pass on. We kill LeBron. How can you let anybody else take a shot? How can you not seize control? Kevin Durant's been in this league 8 years. He's yelled at nobody. Westbrook, his point guard's a ball hog, yells at nobody. Oh, they're all my friends. He's exactly what you destroy LeBron for. So I said this morning to the young people on my show, I said, he's Dirk Nowitzki. And I like Dirk Nowitzki. Maybe he'll win a title. Dirk won one. I think Kevin Durant will win one. But I said, given the choice, I would take Steph Curry today, next 7 years, over Kevin Durant. Because I think Durant's a 6'11" two-guard who's never intimidated anybody. Increasingly, he can get his points. They don't equal wins. And I'm not going to bang on him for the injury because mostly he's not injured. But he's kind of skinny for his position, plays with more physical players. Now that he has an injury, there's a greater chance he could get another one. And I would take Curry over Durant. But what I find interesting, the stuff we give Durant a pass on, we destroy LeBron on. Durant's not a championship-level player, hasn't always played great in big spots, is 7 rebounds a game for one of the longest players in the game, really doesn't play his position. He's a guard at 6'11". And Stanzik this morning said I was out of my mind, and we put it up on the poll that right today, next 7 years, Curry or Kevin Durant. Vince, where did it? I said I would take. Now, I'm not saying it's a blowout. It'd be close. But I would take Curry because he can control the ball, control the tempo, amazing ball handler. I think this league now is controlled. These point guards are now controlling this league. If you're bad at point guard like the Lakers, you're bad. So it was 70-30 Durant. Our audience went 70-30 Durant. Well, my audience is stupid. What can I say? Stanzik, did you have a problem with my take on that?
I certainly did. Let's just start here. Steph Curry has played 2 fewer years in the NBA, so people just assume he is younger than Kevin Durant. He is actually older by about 6 months. But let's move on quickly here. Steph Curry's missed more games in his career than Kevin Durant has, so he's more fragile. He's not a natural point guard. He's a natural 2-guard who's playing point guard. So you'd rather have a small, fragile, non-point guard playing point guard than a 6'9" scorer who scored 32 points a game last season and was the MVP. Furthermore, the Thunder have been to the finals. Guess how many playoff series Steph Curry has won in his career?
Yeah, look who he's playing
with. Only one.
Kids. He's playing with kids. They said Klay Thompson had a good third quarter, and that Klay Thompson, I mean, did anybody think Klay Thompson was a star like 6 months ago? Klay Thompson's developed into a star. That team's kids, Harrison Barnes, Andrew Bogut can't stay healthy. Curry's, he didn't play with a Westbrook. He didn't play. I mean, you look at that roster, OKC, that's a solid veteran. Ibaka, Durant, veterans.
Veterans, they're all like 25. What are you talking about?
The kids,
Steph Curry is more fragile and not as lethal of a scorer as Kevin Durant, and you'd rather have him.
Steph Curry controls the game, point guard. By the way, he's been hurt a few times. That's what happens when
I thought it was a wing league. What happened to the wing league, you always used to say?
Yeah, I just changed my mind on that one. I like Steph Curry a lot. I've seen him play live twice. He's got the quickest shot in the world. It's incredible. Like, it's cartoonish. Curry gets the ball. It's like ball shot. It's incredible. He is so fascinating. You know how you play YMCA basketball and you always play with a ball hog? That's Curry, except they always go in. Like, Curry's the guy you'd be like, guy shoots way too much. Oh, and in. Like, every time it goes in. He is, in person, incredible to watch. Listen, Stanzik, if you want to go by old data.
All right, let's use new data. Who's shooting a better percentage from the field? It's Durant. Sorry, they have the same percentage from 3 this year. Like, I don't know where you're going.
Yeah, well, maybe you should. My life's going pretty well right now. You're staying in a Bristol, Connecticut hotel tonight. Maybe you want to follow my path of leadership. That's all I'm saying.
Check out The Herd with Colin Cowherd weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and on ESPNU. The Thundering Herd Podcast.